This is a video on homosexual birthing, which in the last few years the accepted name seems to be transgender or transsexual, one of the two. But a few weeks ago, I got a book at the library. This subject has been with me for 40, 50 years. I'm 82 now. And when I was a young man, I saw a lady in Spokane, Washington, and she had read to her fetus, and when her children were born, they could read within 2 years. And some more physicians in southern Illinois made a videotape, and they were fastening them or taping them the pregnant women's stomachs, assumingly, I guess, to make the fetus musical minded or something. I never did get the end of that story. But I had always thought, ever since I read those two things, that the baby learns. Why would these people in southern Illinois go to the trouble if they didn't think the baby could learn something? And why did this lady's kids able to read early if they didn't learn something? So I come to the conclusion that the fetus learns when it's in the mama's belly, and I have thought that ever since, and by God, that was 40, 50 years ago. And everywhere that I went, I was turned, oh, you're crazy, you're crazy, you're crazy. There's a Grenu, our leader is in Johns Hopkins Hospital, and he says that homosexuality starts after birth. He said the children make their own minds up after they're born. Well, pardon me, I got terrible habits. I run up against walls and nobody would talk to me because he printed articles in the American Medical Journal and so forth and everything, and he was it. He's writing a book on it, and blah 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 blah. He's one that they look to, and his word is gospel among all the medical people and the science. And after all, Johns Hopkins Hospital, that's quite a job. So I didn't go anywhere with that. And then I hear that Abdamajan, this is 30-something years later, 40 years later, Abdamajan comes to the United States, and he's asked if there are any homosexuals in Iran, because homosexuality is talked more about in public than it used to be. And he said, no, there aren't any. And I got to thinking, why would a gentleman, the leader of Iran, come here and lie if he didn't believe it was true? So I met a doctor. Well, I didn't meet a doctor. I knew a doctor who was from the Mideast. And I asked her if there are any homosexuals in Iran, and she said no, and she told me why. That women are so depressed that the women over there, that they just accept what comes along, and that's it. They don't care if they're homosexual, if they're straight, or what. She just doesn't want a girl like what she had to go through. But girls are born and they go through the whole process of being stoned if they do something wrong, and if girls got to marry who their fathers want them to marry, and so forth. But anyway, I never put all that together yet. And I got to thinking about that, and I ran into a girl from Pakistan. I asked her the same thing. I got the same answer. I thought, well, a lot of people in the Mideast know all about this. Why don't we in America know about And they don't seem to have homosexuals over there. The war-torn countries seem to have homosexuals. Germany, France, Great Britain, Italy, Czechoslovakia, they all seem to have homosexuals. United States, Canada. Wonder what makes us have homosexuals and them not, and Iran not. Or the gentlemen in Iran think they don't. So I start looking at our women, and I was a teenager when Johnny comes marching home from the war, and he gets married, and he meets he gets his wife, and they all get pregnant, and bingo, they all have children, they multiply, which is what they're supposed to do. And as I think back during those times, I think about the girls who were like 5 years older than I was, but they were all marriageable age. They all looked good to these GIs, these young gals. And they were saying, a number of them, not all of them, were saying, I want a girl. I don't want a boy who's got to go off to war. I want a girl. And then I got to thinking that the two women who told me about Iran, they never said the women had a preference. But I sure heard it in the United States after World War II and after the Korean War. I want a girl. I don't want a boy that's going off to war. I want a girl. I want a girl. Now, truthfully, I can't tell you if I heard it from the same 20 women 20 times each, or if I heard it from 400 different women. I don't know, but it was prevalent. Not everybody who was pregnant said it, just a percentage of them. So they all got birth, they all gave birth. And as I looked at the records after the people gave birth, there was no records. You can't tell a homosexual sitting in a crib next to another person. So when I looked at those records, they didn't show me anything, so maybe I was off base. But then these kids grow up. Then they're 2, 3, 4 years old, or 4 years old, 3, 4 years old, and mother takes them down to buy their own toys. And little Johnny buys a doll and a dollhouse and a bake stove and something else that's female, doll clothes and so forth. And Mama goes home and says, "Oh, isn't that cute? Johnny is so family oriented. He wants to build his own house already and with his own family in it and so forth." Yeah, right. And I guess all the other mothers made excuse for their Johnnies too, because every mother loves her baby and every baby loves its mother. That's just the way things are. Pardon me, I don't seem to be able to sit here. My cameraman, she's not here, my director, she's not here to tell me what to do today. But they get up, they go to school. Then they get into 3rd or 4th grade, the teacher says, "Okay, we're going to play a game. Everybody join hands." And Johnny sticks out this hand and gets a hold of Billy. And, hey, I like the way Billy's hand feels. Gets a hold of Ann. Why don't I like the way Ann's hand feels? I'm a little boy. I'm supposed to like little girls. But Johnny's hand feels better to me. I like Johnny. Or I like Billy better than Ann. So he goes home from school and he knows he's different. And I doubt if he tells his parents. I really don't know, but I doubt it. And he gets in bigger in grade school, and he gets in high school, and he meets a bigger pool of kids, and he meets them in different ways. And they all form in groups away from school and so forth, and they stay separate. They stay separate because they know they're different. They don't want to go out for football. They're not necessarily football players. So what happened to them along the way? They become transgender. The mother wanted a girl instead of a boy, and she thought girl, girl, girl. And she had the body of a boy in her belly. And she gave that boy the education and the mind of a girl while it was in her belly. And the sexual preference that a girl would like went along with it. She taught the baby in her belly to be a girl, but it was a boy physically. So when it grows up, it's a boy that has the outlook of a girl. And here's another one over there who's a boy that has the outlook of a girl. And what do girls like? Well, they like boys. So what are they seeing in the boy that has the outlook of a girl? They are seeing a boy. The two girls' minds are matching up with boys' bodies. It's just that simple. If it's two girls' bodies who have the minds of boys, what do boys like girls? And when they look out, what do they see? Two girls' bodies. It's two boys matching up with girls' bodies. It's that simple. I hope I've explained it in a way that you understand. But that's how it works. Nobody would believe me. And they don't believe me because it's too simple. There's no cross sections, no hair sticking up, no thumb, no horns, no nothing. No nothing in the back of the neck, no arrows through the heart that makes a thing. It's just a simple sexual scientific movement that happens within the body. From the lady saying, I want a girl, and it's a boy in her belly, she gets a girl. If the lady says, I want a boy, and it's a girl in her belly, she gets a boy. She gets transsexuals. That's it. Okay, I hope I didn't lose half of you there. And I might have. But that's what happened, and you're not going to change it by plugging me out and not listening to what the hell I have to say from now on. I'm going to jump to the end of the story, and then I'll go back and get the middle of it. Several weeks ago, I was at the hospital, and I talk about this with wherever I'm at, whoever I'm talking to. And a guy and I were waiting for our names to be called to go in to get checked up, to get our checkups. And a lady was standing there, and she was leaning over looking at me like this. And I said, can I help you, ma'am? Is it something I said? She said, oh, yes. I said, what's the problem? She said, oh, nothing. I agree with what you said. Could have knocked me over with a feather. I have been years trying to teach people what was what. When I went back to the universities, after the guy got degraded, I'll tell you about that. But this lady in the hospital said, my doctor told me I was going to have a boy. So I prepared for a boy. My daughter is 15 years old. She's a lesbian. I said, oh my God. I said, you know, it's not your fault. She said, oh, I know that. I figured that out years ago. I said, someday she's going to bring home a lover. She said, already has, and I'm okay with that too. My daughter and I understand each other. It wasn't my fault. We got down to it. That was it. Now, let's go back to that doctor. I'm jumping around here. I hope you can follow me. And if you've tuned in on this, you got to have a brain, so I'm sure you can. If that doctor followed her through life, through the years, the first 10, 15 years of her kid's life, he knows the mistake was his. Why hasn't he tried to explain to people what I'm trying to explain? Second reason, he knows the mistake is his, and he's not going to say a damn word because he don't want to get sued for malpractice. So if it happens and a doctor knows it, they don't talk. But on the second hand, on the second version of this, don't blame the doctors. Doctors seldom follow a child till they're 14, 15 years old, where this would start to show up. So they really wouldn't know it. So maybe some of them are guilty and maybe most of them are innocent. I don't know. But it was there. And it was so simple that no one looked at it. And that's why I'm having the problem of selling it. This gentleman, who was the guru that I gave up on when I stopped going around, he wrote papers for the American Medical Journal and the doctors and everything, and he was he took 2 children. This was a hard pill to swallow. 2 boys. I hope he wasn't in on this. And they went to circumcise them, and they castrated one of them. And they decided, what are you going to do? Well, we'll make a girl out of him. And when the doctor from John Hopkins Hospital found out, he went to see the parents and said, oh, bring those kids to me. He said, I will see that their sexualities are online, what they're supposed to be. This goes along with what I'm studying, what my thinking is. This will be perfect. So they take the kids to him, and he writes in the American Medical Journal, oh, Janie plays with dolls, and she plays with the tea sets, and she plays with everything, and Janie is just doing fine, and Jimmy plays with the baseballs and so forth. And there's only one thing wrong. The doctor had to be a jerk and didn't expect these kids to grow up and learn how to read. And when they read what was going on, they put him out of business. And he was supposed to have a second book published, and nobody published a damn thing because he was a fraud. And when I went back to him after that and said, hey, remember me? I'm the guy who said it happens. And from the female, and they said, get out of here. We got rid of one clown. We don't want another one. And nobody looked at the situation for the 40 years that I'm talking about. Nobody. Until there got to be so many homosexual kids that they were all on the scene and they couldn't be ignored. When they were babies, they didn't know it. When they were young kids in grade school, they didn't bother anybody. When they were in high school, maybe they were getting on people's nerves. But when they entered college and so forth, in the year June 28th, 1966, which is exactly 20-something years after I said these babies were born, there was a party at the Stonewall Bar in New York, pardon me. And it was raided by the police. And it turned out to be a brawl between the homosexuals and the police. These were all young men now. They weren't going to get pushed around anymore. They weren't going to be called fags and queers and whatever. And the cops call them that, and they punch a cop out and so forth. So anyway, it hits the newspapers. And the next morning, America wakes up and says, where in the hell did all these Indians... No, that was George Custer. A little bit more. Where in the hell did all these homosexuals come from? America never took them serious until that day become the homosexual movement in our country. And I go back and they still won't listen to me because this clown had put such a stigma on the fact that nobody would touch the subject of what made a homosexual child, what formed a homosexual child. Not made, they were put together by faith. So, Ahmadinejad comes and I print this booklet. They all got thrown away. Nobody answered me. Nobody. I got out of the hospital and I got to talking and I got to thinking about what I'm going to do. And I thought, well, God had to save me for one thing. When I got out of the hospital, my roommate told me that he had cashed out all my credit cards. And I just laughed and said, that's all right. I pay you rent and I'm not going to pay you. I'll make up the money. But I got to thinking, what is all this about? So I moved. I didn't move yet. I got all my papers together and everything. Yeah, I did. I was going blind also, and my daughter moved me down here to Texas. And I got down here and I put everything out. And I got to thinking, what am I doing down here? I don't know anybody. I don't know anything. What is my purpose here? And I got all my old work out. And I went through it and I looked at it and said, what am I missing? What am I missing? I know that it comes from the mind of the mother teaching the baby. But I don't have the connection. And then I got to thinking about the women that I heard talk about, I want a girl, I don't want a boy, I don't want a girl, I don't want a boy. After World War II. And I looked at when they were born in the 47, 48, 49, 50, 51. I looked at the 21 years later when they all become of age and the homosexual movement started. The whole timeline is there for to have started after World War II. The big influx of homosexuals. Now, let me go back. I'm going to take you back a minute. You're not going to remember any of this, trust me. Alfred Kinsey wrote a book, Homosexuality, in the late 30s. And Bob Hope made fun of it, and a few of the comedians made fun of it, the Kinsey Report and so forth, and maybe you heard of the Kinsey Report, I don't know what. He said homosexuality before the war was 14%. And I read his report, and I'm a cook, but I happen to disagree with Mr. Kinsey because he included, if a man was considered a homosexual, that means he had sex with anybody except a human female partner. So he counted all the farm boys that chased the lambs and the pigs and the goats. So he come up with 14%. As near as I could figure out, from the deduction and everything in his book and everything, it was maybe 4 or 5%. Now, I don't know what it is today or what it was when the baby boomers hit when the homosexual movement started. I don't know the percentage. I'm not that smart. But I put it back to that's when it started and that's why it started. It's because the women said, I want a girl, I don't want a boy. And they transformed the thoughts of that fetus thinking like a girl, and the other one thinking the thoughts of the girl fetus thinking like a boy. That's it. That is the best explanation you will ever find. And I dare a doctor, I dare a physicist, I dare anybody to come up with a better one. Because they can't. It started after war, after the war, and my timeline was there in 1966. And then we had the homosexual became the movement ever since. Hell, it was 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I predicted there was going to be homosexual marriages. And when I predicted there were going to be homosexual marriages, I predicted there was going to be a homosexual divorce. Now, I wrote a book, The Alien Within Me, in 1988. In this particular book, I talk about the mind of the female is the one that causes the homosexuality in the body of the boy, in the baby. 1988. Now, if anybody wants to read my blog and come along and say, oh, I knew that, let them come up with something before 1988. Please. I started the book in 88. I copyrighted it in 90. I published it in 91. There's my handsome picture right there. It's in the book. I feel like Gramps Andy Griffin. It's in the book. But I have looked at this all my life. I have believed this, and it isn't until I didn't make these tapes, until I sat down here and put it together, that it's the no homosexuals in Iran, and the influx of babies born in the United States after World War II, not just the influx of babies, but the influx of the thought that the ladies wanted a girl instead of a boy, that caused the transgender of the child. It's just that simple. I had a lady, a nurse, that calls on me. I talked about this to everybody. People here, they see me coming, they run the other direction because they know what I'm going to talk about. I was telling a nurse about this. She said, well, that's interesting. That tells me a lot. I said, what tells you a lot? She said, well, my son. I said, is he homosexual? She said, oh, no, he's all boy. I said, well, what about your son? I know this lady very well. I could give you her name, but I will not. She said, when I got pregnant, for the first 3 months, because I'm a nurse, I handled it myself. And I wanted a girl. Oh, I thought I was going to get a girl. I listen to everybody. You carry a girl up high, you carry a boy in your ass, you do this, you do that. I taught that kid to be a girl for 3 months. And I went to the doctor, and the doctor took an ultrasound and said, you're going to have a boy. Hello, Joanne, you just became Johnny. And she did a switcheroo, and she taught the fetus to be a boy. And she has. I said, is he? Oh, he's all boy. She said, like all mothers, I didn't want to cut his hair, and he got real long hair. When he was 3 years old, I tried to braid it. He said, not me, not me, not me, not me. She said, I just went out and got it cut like a boy. She said, it tells me that everything I try to do to him that a mother would do to a girl. Not me, not me. I want to put clear polish on his fingernails so they won't split. Not me, not me, not me. She says, I know what you're talking about. He had to learn that in the first 3 months that he was in my belly. That he was about the girlish stuff. She said, but I educated him and he's all boy. That makes me happy. And there's some lady here that came to me when she had told me stories, and I won't repeat them, but I know from the people that I talk to and the people that listen. Another nurse come in and she had said something about her kids, that she noticed something, And I know just from a few people that I talk to and so forth. Of course, I have the habit of talking to a lot of people that I don't know. But I'm on the right track, and what I'm saying is true. I can't get a personality to pick up what I'm saying and run with it. I wrote the book. I read the book on homosexuality, and I sent an email. I can't write my own email. I don't know anything about this computer. I bought the computer. I got it all set up. I pay somebody to come in and switch my tapes over to YouTube and so forth because I just don't get it. I'm 82 years old and I refuse to learn anything except it's about homosexuality. But I know I'm on the right track amongst the common people. I guess I'm going to have to take an ad out in the paper to get the common people to read this, or take a bulletin board out up here on Gessler Road. You want to learn about homosexuality? You know, youtube.com, Howie51, see homosexual birthing. I guess I'm going to have to take a big bulletin board out to have the drivers read it as they go by. Maybe 1,000 drivers. 1,000 drivers read it. And maybe a television camera will come along and shoot it or something. I don't know how to get it out. I'm a cook. Which is one reason that the college professors wouldn't talk to me. Oh, you're a cook, and you believe it happens in the mind. And he's the guru over at Johns Hopkins. He's homosexual's answer to the problem. Yeah, right, he was. Yeah, sure. I'm still around, he's gone. But anyway, here I had some lady come to me. I talked to everybody, and she starts giving me Bible passages. Bible quote, Bible quote, Bible quote. Wait a minute. This is not God's fault. Oh, but passage so-and-so. Oh, but I said, it's not God's fault. I said, these couples multiplied like they were supposed to do. It got twisted up between the mother's love. She loved her fetus so much she didn't want it to go to the war. And how could she stop that? She could have a girl instead. That's what happened, damn it. Don't tell me God did to these people, because the mothers and fathers of these children, they've gone through hell living here with that. And churches ostracize them and people pointing at them and saying, it's your fault, your fault, your fault. God does not punish innocent people. My God doesn't. Maybe yours does. You go off and read your Bible and you're okay, but don't come around me with that stuff. Sorry about that. But that's the way I feel about it. You have to God bless the mothers and the fathers of the transsexuals. You just have to. In the meantime, that's all I have to say. If you have a transsexual or transgender child in your family, transgender child in your family, after you see me on this tape, it's your fault, not theirs. It's your fault. In the meantime, remember, if you're only 5 minutes early to work, you're probably too late. And I thank you for staying the distance.